The New York City draft riots of 1863 tear apart this simple narrative that the Civil War was North versus South, and the North wanted to stay together and didn't want slavery, and the South wanted to pull itself apart and have slavery. That this was purely geographical. This is the year that Emancipation Proclamation was done on, and this had been anticipated and been being worked actively against by New York City newspapers for years because the entire textile industry of New York relied on cotton from southern states, right? The cotton was being grown, picked, harvested down south and brought up to New York City to be turned into textiles. And that was a huge part of the economy. But also, New York City was still profiting from the slave trade up until right this era. All these ships that were doing slave trading were being manufactured in New York City and financed through New York City. They were just no longer bringing slaves to New York. But the profit ratio on going over to Africa, getting people and taking them to Brazil or Cuba was huge. We're talking like tenfold return. And so people were still investing in this. They were just doing it kind of quietly and under the surface. So the entire economic system of New York is still relying on the southern states to produce cotton and relying on the slave trade still. For years, the newspapers had been warning all of the poor white Irish immigrants in New York City that if the Emancipation Proclamation passed and all of these black enslaved people down south were free, that they would come up and steal all their jobs and it would be terrible. And then the Emancipation Proclamation passes, then the Enrollment Act passes, and then all of the military in New York ends up being called down to the Battle of Gettysburg to handle the Battle of Gettysburg at the beginning of July, even though the first Enrollment Act draft is scheduled for July 11th with a follow up on July 13th. And they decide to do the draft anyway. They decide they're just going to roll with it and it will be okay. And it was not okay. There was a tinderbox waiting to spark. When I say draft riot, it makes you think that this is about the draft. But this quickly becomes a racially targeted mob that is chasing down and assaulting and murdering black people in New York. They're burning black homes. They burn down a black orphanage. People are absolutely terrorized by this group of people who are, the same tensions that are playing out big picture in the United States play out on the streets of New York. And New York is northern, right? New York is geographically northern, but there were miniature outbursts of these same tensions popping off in New York City in 1863.